Shutting down and securing a Kodiak 100. Interesting content? Maybe not, but do we have to do it after we fly? Yes, we do. What's up everyone? Mark Brown here with 11 Aviation, standing here in front of this beautiful Kodiak 100. Now, we are going to teach you guys today about shutting down and securing the Kodiak for overnight parking. Now, before everyone blasts me in the comments, there are a lot of different ways to do this. There are different airports that mandate different things. So this will not be inclusive. This is just how I'm going to do it in today's environment. So if you guys have different techniques or there's things that I mentioned that you disagree with, drop a comment below. I do read them all. My team reads them all. We love to see it. Also, if you like this content, please consider subscribing. Really appreciate you guys watching.
We're going to do a shutdown and securing. Here's what we're going to do. All right, so I've just parked. We're on a backcountry strip, so there's a handful of things that I want to do if I'm going to be parking here overnight. So this is going to be a Kodiak shutdown and also a Kodiak securing. So right now we got the engine running, we just landed. After takeoff, there's a handful of things that I would have done sort of on the runway or just off the runway that I've saved sort of to go through here. So first thing I'm going to do, normally I would bring my flaps up. But since I'm on sort of a shorter backcountry strip, I'm actually going to leave my flaps set at 20. And the reason for this is if I had some sort of flap malfunction while I was at this airstrip, I would be very hard pressed to get out of here with flaps at 0. My takeoff roll is essentially double, in some cases more than double, with flaps 0 as it flaps 20. So anytime I'm on a backcountry strip, I always leave my flaps at 20, simply so if, I started back up tomorrow morning and I started the airplane, I had a flap malfunction, well, I could at least get out of this backcountry strip where there's no services, be hard to reach anybody, and I could get to somewhere where where they had services, etc. So sort of like a little pro tip there. Keeping the flaps at 20 on a backcountry strip can be helpful should you have any issues on startup the next morning or the next startup. I also normally would bring this fuel condition to low idle, but I've brought it sort of halfway back to low idle, and the reason for that is I have the AC running, so it's pretty hot outside, so during the taxi and I wanted the AC running, and of course in a Kodiak 100 you need the NG to be at 58% or higher in order to run the AC. Now, the newer Kodiaks, the software has an air conditioning inhibit function, which would inhibit the AC from running below 58%, but sort of just best practices to bump that fuel condition up to 58% when the AC is on. So sort of two normal things I would have done after after landing is brought my flaps up and then brought my fuel condition to low idle. In this case, we're modifying both of those a little bit simply because I want my flaps at 20 for the short field, and I want my fuel condition at 58% for the AC. So then I'm going to reset my trims back for takeoff, and then I'm going to reset any of my sort of ice protection. I would have turned my pitot heat off if I had those on. I would have brought my engine inlet in normal or bypass depending on what I needed. Now I brought it back to normal because on startup I want it back in normal. I also can turn my lights off, so I'm going to turn basically everything but my beacon on. I always leave my beacon on simply because if I walk away from the airplane and my master switch is still left on, my beacon's going to be the giveaway from outside the plane. So I typically, in all of our airplanes that we manage or own, we just leave that beacon on all the time. So now that I'm sort of done with my after landing checklist, I'm going to go down through my shutdown checklist. So first thing I'm going to do is turn the environmentals off. So I turn the AC off and turn both cabin and cockpit and cabin environmentals off. Come over here, turn any ice and lights off that I need. Then over here on the startup panel, far left, I'm going to turn my fuel pump off, my auxiliary bus off, generator and alternator off. Of course, I'll have some annunciations come on when those turn off. And then I'm going to come over here, feather the prop, and bring my fuel condition to cutoff. So that's shutting the airplane down. Then I'm going to come up here to my fuel, and I'm going to turn off both fuel tanks. The reason for that is I turn both fuel tanks off because if I'm on any kind of slope, I don't want fuel cross-feeding from one side to another. So that's a really important one to remember, especially in the backcountry. Then I would, you know, take photos of all my times here just to make sure that I've got all the times and know my fuel and all for the next flight. And then we can shut down the master and avionics.
Securing the cockpit. This is probably one of the most important things in the securing part of shutting down and securing the aircraft. So in my decade plus experience flying Kodiaks and having flown pretty much all of them over the course of my career, I have seen more times than not Kodiaks with issues because they were sitting out on a busy ramp, in the case of this ramp with lots of jet traffic or in high winds, and they have damage to the control surfaces. This control lock, which goes in the yoke, which basically locks the ailerons in the elevator, it can save you a lot of money down the road. Anytime the airplane sits outside overnight, or frankly, I'm just parked for a few hours at a busy FBO, I always put this control lock in. So we're outside the Kodiak now, and something I see, it's sort of comical, but a lot of folks that walk away from the aircraft with the doors actually not latched. So the Kodiak 100 and 900 doors will sort of latch and stay like that, but they are not actually closed. Anybody can come over here and just open it. So in order to properly close and latch and secure the Kodiak 100 cockpit doors, you pull down all the way like that, and now they're closed. Now you can lock it. Now nobody can get in. So one of the last things I do is I put all the covers on the aircraft. So I typically store them down here, and we're going to put them on the plane. So these prop anchors are pretty important, and a lot of FBOs will mandate that these are actually on the aircraft. And the reason being is, of course, a PT6 or a turbine prop spins freely. So if they hook a tow bar up to my nose wheel to move my airplane, sometimes this prop with the wind will spin into that tow bar. So they want these prop anchors on and secure so this prop doesn't move anywhere. So now that the covers are on, you'll notice there are two sets of covers that I actually didn't put on. And those are the two plugs that go down in the outlet ducts below on my cargo pod, and on the horizontal, the closeouts of the horizontal. Now the reason at an FBO like this, where I don't put those on, is they both tend to fall out pretty easily. So more often than not, when I've put them on in the past, they've come out overnight with wind, etc. So I don't put them on, but again, like I said at the beginning of the video, there's a lot of different techniques, and in this particular case, on a day like today, this aircraft actually doesn't have them even available for me to put in right now, but I'm foregoing putting those bottom plugs in the horizontal closeout plugs. But generally too, after a flight, I'll just look in here, make sure that all of my fluids, my brake fluid, my oil, etc. is all where it needs to be. So then when I come and do my pre-flight check the morning of the next flight, I sort of have a general trend on, did things leak down while it was sitting overnight, etc. So that's on this side. Now on the other side, I want to check the fuel filter as well. And then also, again, this is not something that I do after every flight. And again, refer to the POH of your aircraft to make sure that you're doing it as the manufacturer recommends. But if you really wanted to, you could also check and drain the fuel filter after your day's flights. So in this little inspection panel here, there is there's a green sort of orangey line that you can lift up on, and that will drain that fuel filter that's sitting right here in the engine compartment. I'm not going to do it right now because I don't have a GATS jar to collect the fuel, but that is something that you can do. All right, so one of the last things I'm going to be doing on the shutdown and securing is emptying the EPA can. Now, again, not something that you have to do after every flight, but after 3 flights, Basically the unused fuel and oil in the system and the stuff that leaks out gets put into what we call an EPA can. It sits right here on the firewall with a cargo pod. The way to empty it is right here next to this gold mast, the breather tube. There's a little sump drain. And like I said, after 3 shutdowns, it'll just empty on the ground. If you don't want that to happen, you can empty it after shutdown or before start the next day. But that's right here. And then of course this gold mast is what we call the breather tube. It's the breathing line for the fuel and oil system right there. So you'll generally have a few drops of oil leaking there. That's perfectly normal. And the last thing, since I'm here by the tires, in this particular case, I'm at an FBO. They asked for me not to set the brake because they need the ability to be able to tow the aircraft. So tonight, I do not have the parking brake set, and the FBO has my aircraft chalked. So that is how you shut down and secure a Kodiak 100 for overnight parking. I'm Mark Brown. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you guys on the next video.